before you, which is the 73rd Ohio Volunteer Infantry Regiment Band. We are a recreation of a group that actually existed during the time of the Civil War. The brass band, the regimental band of a unit from Chillicothe and the surrounding counties in southern Ohio is 73rd Ohio Volunteer Infantry. They were formed in December of 1861 and were all the way through the conflict until the Grand Review of the Armies in Washington, D.C. in May of 1865. And the band was with them the whole time. What you see and what you will hear is pretty much what that band would have sounded like in bands of that type. The regiments of infantry and cavalry and heavy artillery were authorized to have regimental brass bands. And they were approximately 16 members, which more or less we have. And the instruments that we're playing are original instruments from the period. The drums are exact replicas. So what you're going to hear is what the sound of that band style sounded like. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Our first tune that we're going to play is the Star Spangled Banner, which was not the national anthem in 1864, which is when this event today takes place, nor was it the national anthem in 1924. It didn't become the national anthem until 1931 or 1932. So it was just a patriotic melody. They called them national airs. We'll open up, and then you can sing along if you want, but it's not exactly the style that we know it as the national anthem today. So this is the Claudio Portula arrangement of the Star Spangled Banner from 1861. And without further ado, the 73rd Ohio Volunteer Infantry Regiment Band. So as I said, this is an authentic instrumentation of what an Army regimental brass band would have been like during the Civil War. And the instruments that you're hearing are original, the brass ones are, and by and large the mouthpieces are also original. So you are hearing a type of instrument that is not exactly the same as brass instruments today. I'll just briefly talk about sort of the way these sound the way they do, which is, as you might be able to tell, different than modern brass instruments. The first thing is the mouthpiece. That's what we blow and do first. These are more V-shaped versus U-shaped, or cup-shaped. The modern mouthpieces that we play in current bands are U-shaped, so that difference causes the sound to be a little bit more, it's less broad. It's a little bit more compact of a sound. And then the tubing, as it goes through the length of the instrument, is not, it's a very gradual enlargement from the mouthpiece to the bell and flare. Modern brass instruments, they figured out that if they widen this flare of the bell, much more drastically, it made for a louder sounding instrument. So you can say that these instruments kind of are a bit on the quieter side compared to modern brass instruments. And then the other thing is that every instrument is a very thin brass, it's made out of a thin brass sheet. So the weight of the instrument is much lighter than modern brass instruments. So that doesn't give them as much power the same way as the flare of the bell doesn't. And the fact that they're lighter means you can't push them with a lot of air like you can with a modern brass instrument. So these take a different skill set, different approach. The valve systems are the same as a modern brass instrument, so we pretty much all were able to pick these up and play them, but it didn't sound very good at first. We had to learn how to adapt to them. And then I think that we do a decent job. I hope you'll agree by the end of the concert that this ensemble can sound as good as what we're used to hearing today, but these instruments are all over 150 years old. And we'll play the next tune and we're going to talk about the instruments specifically themselves. The next tune is called Captain Blood's Quickstep. I don't know who Captain Blood is. If you can tell me, I'd really love to hear who that person was. And this tune also is an anonymous composer, but it comes from a source, the 1st Brigade Band. They were out of Wisconsin, the 1st Brigade of the 18th Army Corps. So they had a famous band, and so this tune actually comes out of their actual band books. So what you're hearing in the next selection is what real Civil War soldiers would have heard during the war. This is Captain Blood's Quickstep. our next selection, would you mind if I just don't use the microphone and use my loud voice? I feel like it's just too much going back and forth. But the next selection is a beautiful ballad written by one of the greatest American songwriters, Stephen Foster. And the song has a really kind of a sad story. The tune is called Gentle Annie, and the way I understand it, he unfortunately, I don't know if he actually witnessed it happen, but the daughter of one of his family friends, her name was Annie, and she was struck by a carriage and killed. He may have witnessed it, I'm not sure, but either way, it put him into quite a depressed, melancholy mood. So he wrote this song then and dedicated it, named it after her, this sort of anonymous girl named Annie. But it's a beautiful ballad, and it will start featuring a duet between Randy here playing the baritone. So I'll talk just for a second about the instruments that you're going to hear in this one. The B-flat baritone horn and a duet with that, and the B-flat tenor horn. They play the same range, but that's a little bit bigger around, has a bigger bore, and so it sounds a little bit more full. This sounds more like a trombone, kind of, and that's more like a euphonium, if you know what that is, kind of. And then the melody switches over to the E-flat soprano voice, which today we have both of them, both instruments playing the E-flat soprano voice are what we call over-the-shoulder sax horns. The other type of instrument that could have played that was E-flat cornets, which we have two examples of true cornets here, which are a different family from all the rest of the instruments. Those are in B-flat, so they're a little bit lower, and I'll talk more about those as we highlight them. So first the duet between the low voices, and then the soprano voice comes in later with Gentle Annie by Stephen Foster. I kind of made an error and I skipped over one of the instruments that kind of has an interlude between the tenor and baritone duet. Then the melody switches to the E-flat alto horns, which we have 3 of them here in the middle of the band. And I'm going to use, if you keep your horns up really quick, I want to talk about some of the style of valves on the instruments, because you might be looking at, I recognize those from modern band instruments, and then those kind of look like other valves that I've never seen before, or they look like French horn, whatever. So we have a really neat, not phenomenon, but we have an example of each of the three major valve types that were popular on brass instruments in the 19th century. The one that you're probably most familiar with, or what looks like something you're familiar with, is in the middle. Those are called Berliner valves, and they are a type of vertically oscillating piston valve. And you just push them down, and that doesn't exist anymore, but the Perronnet valve is what we have on all our modern brass instruments. So it works pretty much the same way, they're just a little bit shorter and stumpier. And then on either side of Phil here in the middle, we have two examples of alto horns that have rotary valves. One is top action, just meaning that when you push down on the valve levers, you push down from the top, and then the rotor twists this way. And then we have side action rotary valves, which the valve still twists this way, but the levers that you push are from the side. And so some of these B-flat cornets here, those are also side action rotors. And top action rotor, or side action. I think we got all, basically those are the three types of valve, and every section has got, the base is also the same thing. Berliner valves, top action rotors, side action rotors. So that's your basic valve types, and they all work the same. You push the valve down, and it adds the air column to that section of tubing that you've now opened up by pushing the valve down. So it makes it lower as you push the valves down. So yeah, we had the tenor and the baritone duet, we had altos take over, and then we had the E-flat soprano with the highest voice. I mentioned just briefly the bass. The basses are playing the bass line, the lowest voice. And they look like tubas, but they're not quite true tubas today. Those are what are called bass sax horns. Moving up from the bass sax horns, we have the baritone sax horn here in B-flat. Those are in E-flat. This is a B-flat baritone sax horn. B-flat tenor sax horn, you can tell they're slightly different board profiles. In the middle, you have the E-flat alto sax horns. You could technically have the B-flat soprano or mezzo-soprano sax horn, but we have cornets covering that noise. Mezzo-soprano, it's one step down from the soprano, which we have on the end here. These are also sax horns, but you'll notice something about them right away. The bells are going over the shoulder. So those over the shoulders did exist in every instrument voice from top to bottom. We only have the top example today. But what that was an invention by the Dodworth family of brass band musicians in New York in the 1840s, 1850s. They were militia bandsmen. They needed a way to have the music go behind them because the band marches at the front of the column of troops. So they're not playing for anybody on the street or down the street. They're playing for the column of troops behind them. So those kind of were only in vogue during the Civil War period. And so when you find that type of instrument, you're pretty guaranteed that it's in a about 20-year period of being built. And the thing that's also difficult about these instruments is that they're all different manufacturers, so that's difficult. And then even within manufacturers, you had different craftsmen making these instruments all by hand. So even the same brand of instrument, the same type, likely was made by different people. So there's infinite variety between all these instruments that makes them that much more difficult to sound in tune and play well together. If you had a lot of money back then, you would buy a matched set from top to bottom, probably all over the shoulders. And there's pictures of bands that have a full set from top to bottom. They probably had an easier time than we do, but because 150 years has passed and these instruments have gone to the four winds, we've grouped them back together and are making them play together. We have our work cut out for us. The next tune we're going to play is one. How many of you have seen the movie Glory? All right. Oh, great movie. It just turned 30 years old, and it was, hopefully some of you got to see it in the theaters. They brought it back out for a couple nights. This tune, it comes
I'm not exactly sure what the source of this tune is, but it's featured in that film when they're marching down the streets in Boston. It's called Hoist Up the Flag. It's a very rousing, patriotic number. So we will now feature that, and if you remember the scene, this music will bring it right back to you. Here's Hoist Up the Flag.